Hey guys, Adrian Palmer here. I'm the founder of the Conscious Dream Podcast, and I'm here to let you guys know that I'll be going Instagram Live with Luigi Monday. We'll be talking about having difficult conversations with your loved ones and taking the right approach, also understanding perspective, and also understanding that the advice that you may give them might not be the advice that they may need or want to even hear. I also want to touch bases on what's been going on in our country and letting you guys know that people who are being oppressed and who are affected directly and indirectly are dealing with things very harshly right now. I just wanted to let you guys know that being pro-Black and saying Black Lives Matter does not mean that you are anti anything else. It is shown that history has repeated itself and shown that being Black hasn't been valued to anybody else outside of people who are Black. And it is just showing that Black lives also matter. And that's what that is understanding. So I also want to let you guys know is please send a prayer, wrap your hands around your loved ones, your friends, and your family, and let you guys know that we are dealing with some troubled times as of right now. And you may not always understand the people who are oppressed because it is hard to feel the same type of grief when you are not in their shoes. So yes, please, let's have a moment of silence for the people who have been affected directly. I pray you keep a peace of mind, and I pray you protect your peace. I see you.
There we go.
So I made sure I came prepared. I got the notes, all that. You know what I'm saying? So we got everything that we need.
And I see you decked out in the jerseys too.
Yeah, definitely got to show some merch. Definitely have to show some merch.
Well, we're ready.
Yeah, yeah, I think we can get right into it. I think it's a lot of things that we can be able to touch bases on. And I think that the topic at hand today is the podcast topic, which is having hard conversations with your loved ones. So you guys are now tuned in with the Conscious Gym Podcast. I am Adrian Palmer. I'm the founder of the Conscious Gym Podcast. For you guys who will be meeting me now and join later. And we're gonna be having hard conversations with your loved ones. That's what we'll be talking about today. And Luigi, go ahead and introduce yourself to the people out there.
No doubt, brother. Thank you, AD. So to anyone watching, my name is Luigi Pisani. Also a founder, but more than anything right now, just another human being trying to keep that peace within, trying to share that with anyone I come across. In this moment, realizing just the thought process and the heart space where a lot of people are coming from right now. It's now's the time more than ever to continue speaking, that truth, living out that path, sharing it with anyone. That's just basically had enough, man. All this hate, all this violence, all this shit that people kind of see. We've been desensitized to a lot of the things that are being exposed, and sometimes we just take it as it just being like a new normal. But the only thing that's normal about it is that in every single path there is a struggle and there is something for us to try to overcome. So here we are, man.
It is. I think it's a struggle within everything that we have going within us, whether it's a struggle with ourselves, whether it's a struggle within other people, or even with our past traumas or things that we feel like we really can't even get over. I think that the first thing I really want to touch bases on is like understanding that you are giving them a sense of perspective and that they may not always agree on what you may be trying to tell them. Now, I understand there's a lot of different people out there who have their own sense of perspective of what they have going on, and they have their own sense of background knowledge on certain situations and topics. And I understood that I couldn't always be the person that give them advice and for them to be able to take it. And I think the biggest thing that we had to all understand is that ultimately we give perspective, and it's not always right or wrong. Now, from my heart, I may be giving you the right perspective from my heart. I may be looking out for you, but at that point in time, maybe my advice may not be the advice that you may need in this time of need, because what may be the advice that you may need is what life is going to give you to help you simmer down to what's really going on, if that makes sense. So, like, that's something that I had to understand the hard way, because you know it's kind of hard really being able to try to be there for somebody who doesn't even want you to be there for them, and it's almost like they're taking your love or your time even for granted. So that's definitely something I had to come to terms with, you know.
That's probably one of the more difficult parts sometimes, because you are coming from a place where you are trying to openly share something with someone, loved one or not, um, and it's sort of like how we are with our parents, you know, and that sort of figure. Whenever you have someone that you're supposed to be looking up to, or you have someone that's supposed to be instructing you, teaching you one way, shape, or form, you're not always in that space where you actually want to hear them out, where you actually want to accept some of the knowledge or the wisdom or just the goodwill that they're trying to, you know, give out to you. And I say that's one of the parts where, so long as you are doing that part for someone, because you know that in your own conscious, in your own mind, you are trying to lead with that love, then at least that person knows that at some point it's not like they didn't have somebody that was trying to reach out, whether they were open to it or not. You know, you did have somebody that was trying to lend a hand.
And this is another thing, is like, what I've always had to understand is that, like, you know how sometimes some people may come to you and they may always feel as though, like, I am the person that's supposed to help you keep the glue together. I'm the person that's supposed to be your gatekeeper, like a big brother to a little sister, or even vice versa. And it's like, I had to also come to terms with knowing that you're not always there to right their wrongs, and they have the power to make the wrong decision and the right decision. And it's not ultimately always your fault, depending on the result from their decision. So it's almost like one of those things where it's like, I tried to tell you, then I had to make you make your decision, and then based on your decision, no matter if the result was good or bad, I had to make sure that you learned from that decision, because I'm not going to always be there to be able to be the person that helps you make the right decision, if that makes sense. So like, that's what I have to come to terms with, understanding that even with my friends, my close friends, my family, anything like that, I had to also understand that ultimately that our advice isn't always what they may need. It's a sense of perspective, but it's not always a right or wrong way to go about stuff. Ideally, it's just ideally how you may view what's going on at the time. So that's kind of my take on things. So I mean, it's just hard wanting to be there for somebody in the proper fashion when they need these failures and stuff like that.
Yeah, you know, and who really can actually adequately be that judge of, oh, what you're doing is right or is wrong, because at the end of the day it's just results of that person and their life experience. You know, I have no control over the decisions that you end up making in your life, you know, and that's one of those things where you don't even have to look at it like you're some kind of judge or a higher authority. You know what I mean? It's sharing authentically the place where you're at in your heart and that intention, not judging that person for going one way or another, because at the end of the day, you know, that's just part of that journey. You know, we have to have people in our lives that end up going to jail, that end up, you know, losing themselves through a bottle, that end up working, you know, that slave-like 9-to-5 job, you know, kind of thing. We have to have people experience those things so that we can actually, you know, see, right? Like, okay, this is something that makes sense to me. This is something that I actually want to participate in my life as well, you know?
But and that's the thing. I feel like we're talking from the perspective of somebody who is actually on the edge of trying to be there for someone else who is trying to then receive, or may not even want to receive, the advice or help from another person. So in my eyes, I feel like, how do you approach somebody who doesn't want you to then be there for them, in a sense, you know? And another thing that I had to learn from what was really going on was that I had to ultimately respect their decision, because the consequences behind their wrong answers may be the results they may need to wisen them up. You know, so that's almost like, you know, dealing with the rebellious teenager, helping somebody get off of a bad habit, whether it's something as serious as drugs, or whether it's something that's not as, I guess, taken more lightly, as far as I guess a diet, or some kind of different habits, you know, like that. So that's what I had to realize, you know, trying to be there for somebody, and pushing and pushing and pushing them, and ultimately coming to terms to understanding that, you know what, if they won't take my advice, I know life would then wisen them up. But I had to also come to terms with knowing that I have to make peace with knowing that that consequence for them may be what they need, but sometimes we don't even want them to have that consequence because sometimes it can be a result of them going off edge, you know?
Yeah.
Like, for instance, you don't have the rebellious teenager who likes to stay out late, party, gamble, or anything like that. It can also end up them losing their life or having jail time and stuff like that. And sometimes that's the consequence they need, but that's not the consequence we may want to choose for them, you know, because we want the best for them. So,
yeah, I mean, you know, in any situation like that, when you are, you know, in that sort of place, and a person is receptive, person is open, for the most part, I'd say like you gotta show them that there's something about, well, actually show yourself, you know, there's something about observing, you know, that process, because again, it's like with children, you know, children having to learn how to walk, they don't get to that point unless they fall on their hands and knees several times. You know what I'm saying? And
yeah.
for some reason, we kind of feel like as soon as we grow into this adulthood, it's not okay anymore for people to fall on their hands or knees. You know, like I gotta look down on you because you fall. As a matter of fact, I gotta thank you because of the way that sort of, you know, happens, you know, in life, because I've been there myself. Somebody else has to go through it themselves, and that's that sort of circle of life that has to continue occurring, and we have no control over it. And that's another illusion, you know. It's kind of thinking that even that person making the decision like has so much control. It's just things that are just, you know what I mean, like they just occur, you know what I mean, it just happens.
You know, the biggest thing I understand from a conversation though is like you ever try to talk to somebody and it's like breaking down the components of what a conversation really is, and
Mm-hmm.
you know how you communicate nonverbals, verbals, you know, the pitch and tone of somebody's voice, the loudness, the softness of somebody, like, you know, the facial expressions. So many things that you can take away from a conversation. But ultimately, what I had to understand is from communication, no matter how many times we can go back and forth, no matter how many times you can give me nonverbals or any kind of verbal stuff like that, if I see any of that stuff as a sign of disrespect or anything like that, I can ultimately turn the conversation differently. It can also turn it to a point where I try to defend myself in a sense because I feel as though I'm being threatened or attacked. So then that's how I guess conversations can end up turning to turning a toe, like turning a twist. So in my mind, I felt like I had to understand ultimately later that the best thing from a conversation wasn't just communicate, because we can communicate all day, but if we never comprehend or learn from each other at any given time, then we're never going to get anywhere. So that's what I then had to understand, was that if I communicate effectively, but if I don't comprehend it, I will then not make it anywhere. So coming at them the wrong way will put them in defense. So I know that we will never get anywhere if I end up talking to somebody and then I offend them. So I had to learn now with dealing with like troubled teens and group homes is that, you know, they come from a sense of trauma and understand that they're easily triggered. So I know if I raise my voice in a certain way, or if I belittle them in any kind of way, that it turns the trajectory of the conversation to something else. I know you've ever argued with somebody and it's like you're trying to communicate and comprehend where they're coming from, but you're also trying to educate them on your point of view. And then ultimately you say something that rubs them the wrong way, and now they have changed the trajectory of the conversation to the point where it's like, oh, well, you're calling me this or you're yelling at me. And it's like, no, pay attention to the facts. We talk about the facts here. This is what you need to comprehend. And so that's why I've had to work longly on, you know, my tone of voice, come across the right way. And when I do try to prove a point, I actually am working through facts in the sense of perspective and understanding that it's a right and wrong way to do stuff, but there's also a perspective, which then puts me in the fast lane of letting people know that I am not trying to say that I'm right and you're wrong. I am trying to let you understand and comprehend why I see the way I see. And let you understand that because I see the way I see, I will not make that an excuse. I'll still, like, you know, let you know that, hey, this is my wrong, this is my right or whatever like that, but this is my truth of why I see things the way I see it, you know?
Yeah, you know, it's like when they say with things about perspective, you know, perspective being everything, right? There's a very funny image that I just came across where there's a cartoon character. One is standing on one side, and he's looking like a pile of wood, and it looks like there's four pieces. And then there's another cartoon character on the other side, right? And where he's standing from, because of the way it's drawn, it looks kind of 3D like, you know, and he only sees three piles of wood, right? So, right. So you have one screaming four and the other one screaming three, you know?
Yeah.
And so the same thing, you're talking about a teen that's troubled because you know, they've gone through like a certain trauma, they've been beat, you know, they've been just abused in some way, shape, or form. You know, you definitely, you can't show up physically in that same kind of presence as the person that was hurting them, you know. So that's another part as it comes to, you know, body language. I mean, I'm looking at some of the protests right now, you know, and I'm wondering to myself, you know, you can't face a wall of police officers and National Guard with another wall, because that's just, you know, that's going to clash. You know, even if people are just walking, you know, in peace or whatever, it's the shape, it's what they don't see, because at that point, when your adrenaline is pumping, when things are getting heated, when the argument is really getting intense, and this is whether you're individual, like with a person just one-on-one, or you got a whole crew with a whole crew, you know, very much it is the way that you're standing, the way you're saying certain things that matter most, right? Over 55% of our communication does come from that nonverbal, you know, how I'm standing, how I'm demonstrating myself. And so if I'm looking at you and I'm standing like this, I'm like, yeah, dog, let me talk to you. Go ahead. Yeah, tell me how you feel, you know, that sort of thing. You know, I mean, that don't look very receptive.
It's true because, you know, like with me being a psychology major and getting my degree in psychology, you know, I had to learn from nonverbal cues and different things like that. And even working with, you know, troubled youth that are from age 8 to age 12 to age 15 and 18, it's like your approach has to be different. You have to also understand, like, you know, sometimes when I know that one of the little girls, they get in a fight, you know, they're both 8 years old, they get in a fight, you know, kids are going to be kids. And I have to understand that sometimes when I'm trying to feel where they're coming from, I have to get on one knee, because me towering over them can maybe be a little bit intimidated, but I also then, when I get on their level, lets them know that, like, I'm on their level. I'm here to help them. And it helps correspond better to let you know that, okay, you're not towering over me. You're not such an authority figure. You're actually here for me when you're looking eye to eye. It's a different kind of approach.
Mm-hmm.
But also understanding that, like, I know there's a like I was saying earlier, there was a right and wrong way to go about certain things, but I know that body language and a lot of different things give off not verbal cues, but certain cues of how we approach things and how we take things, and it almost falls
never take it personally.
Right, and it falls to the category of getting, like, the close ones to you to do the right thing, even through verbal cues, non-verbal cues, and things like that. So I feel like, have you ever felt like you ever came to somebody and you already know how this person is going to give you the advice, so you go to them and you still get the advice from them, but it's like, I like that advice and I can see how that would work, but I don't think that advice would work for me. I think it'll work for you in that situation. Mm-hmm. So it's like, for me, I'm the friend that if you come to me with advice, you know, I'll give you a plethora of options, because I want to walk you through different scenarios of what would work and how your mindset works through those different scenarios, because we've got to be realistic with what you would choose. You know, so, and then what I would do is I would give you options, and then not only just to be the shoulder to cry on. You know, you can come to me, you can talk to me, but I'm also going to give you options to help you get through what you're going through, because I hate going to people and trying to talk to people, and they're like, damn, that's crazy. And it's like, I mean, damn, I know it's crazy. That's why I came to talk to you about it, so I can figure out what to do about the next step with it. And, you know, and it hurts to know that you're trying to come talk to somebody, and all they're trying to do is either be like, hear the gossip, or just hear what you got going on, and not really give you advice on what to do and steer you in the right direction. You know, that's what really, I guess, hinders, in my eyes, relationships, because it's almost like, if you can't be there for me in a time of need, like, why would I need you to be there for me in a time of, like, good, and when the blessings roll in and stuff like that, you know? Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, you know, I feel like when you are that person, when you come into somebody and you're trying to share something crazy that's going on in your life or whatever it is, you know, when you're in that situation, bro, it's like, most of the time it just feels good to just voice whatever it is that's kind of going on inside you, or whatever it is that you just experienced, you know? So as soon as you kind of give that person, somebody else, right, that opportunity to just voice whatever is aching them, you know, because when we got deep, dark secrets, or when we have something that's messed up that's happened to us, you know, it's never a good idea to kind of keep that inside and just like, you know what, I'm going to ignore this until, you know, it builds up to the point where now I'm just going to blow up on somebody that's innocent, you know? And so even just being like, playing that part of, okay, I'm just going to observe, I'm going to listen, I'm going to hear out how crazy your story is, you know? And then at that point, kind of just sit back again, you know, and kind of just watch and observe that person to see how it is that they've, you know, how they feel about the way you've related. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? Because even just giving this, like, yeah, you know, I can understand you. I can understand how crazy it is. Always without judgment, you know, because there's tons of crazy things that have happened to me in my life, or things or decisions that I've made, you know, that for any person that I speak to, they're always gonna also have that same kind of like, damn, can't believe you did that, or I can't believe that happened to you. You know what I'm saying? So it's all very relative on that spectrum as well.
So touching back on the matter that we're talking about with, talking to friends, like, have a conversation with our loved ones. How do you have the conversations with people that haven't experienced what you have experienced and don't know how to take the proper approach or be empathetic towards things that you never experienced? For instance, being say African American, I have Caucasian friends. I mean, and vice versa. I mean, for other people as well. So
Yeah.
how do you expect for somebody to go through or even be empathize for something or someone else when they've never experienced it? Like how do you then take the proper approach in your eyes? Because I mean, it's always different approaches that you have to take from different people, because there's different issues that they have from being trauma related, from background, from what they've experienced, from their perspective, from how they grew up, and it's just so many different like variables that are put into one to make them have a certain perspective of what kind of lens they see out of. So what would your advice be for somebody who hasn't experienced what you've been through, and then they come to you for advice on a matter you've never even like went through at all,
Shit, bro. I mean, look, I'll speak to you on something that actually just happened to me very recently, because it's close to my memory, and it's close to heart at the same time. But you know, very recently I made a post, you know, and it was about racism, you know,
Right.
and the post did have to do with, you know, my exposure to a prejudice that directly came from my own family, you know. Every summer growing up, between the ages of like 3, 4, and about 17 or so, my summers were spent in Peru, and and I had a situation with a family member where, you know, in Peru we have like, you know, you have different types of Peruvians, you know, just like you have different types of Americans. You know, you ever meet like a Chinese Jamaican person, you know, kind of like freaks
Yeah.
you out. You're like, wait, is that possible? Yeah. So there's a lot of different things, and I happen to be one of the more, you know, clear or lighter toned, you know, kind of Peruvians, let's
More
say.
transparent.
Um, which at the end of the day, again, still same kind of bullshit, because the only color that should matter, right, is the one that cuts open. You know, that you see when you cut that wound open. You know what I mean? That's the
Right.
it. But essentially, I had somebody else, you know, reprimand me in a way, again, in my family, because I was sharing something about my family. You know what I mean? So I had me sharing a story about family, and another family member coming to me about sharing that story about my family. You know, because there's always that thing. At least it is a Hispanic households where like you don't share like the dirty laundry that's at home, basically, right? It's kind of like the loose translation. You know,
Yeah.
you keep the family shit, you know, at home, and like you don't tell anybody about that stuff and like whatever. But now is the kind of time for myself where it's like vulnerability at the most extreme level is the only thing that I can't give, because I'm seeing people that are actually really hurting and really in pain, right? So when I try to describe that situation to someone that they don't have a sibling like that, or a family member that's done the same thing, that's, you know, reprimanded them or whatever, um, the way that I just approached it was, you know, honestly, like looking into the situation, one, understanding that this other family member that's reprimanding me, I'm not going to change the way that they are, you know, and they are of course entitled to whatever it is that they want to give out to me, you know, like whatever it is that they want to say to me, you know, they can say it because that's their piece, and as soon as they say their piece, then we can kind of move on, you know. So when I was explaining this story to somebody who again hasn't gone through the situation, uh, the only way that I could do it in fairness was just kind of letting them know, uh, not so much the facts, but like the feelings behind these facts for me. You know, so I was trying to express my feeling, like the hurt almost that I had, but at the same time, it was like an acceptance of that hurt. You know, because again, I'm not going to change this other person. They're going to say whatever they got to say, but I express my feelings behind that whole situation, because sometimes in feelings of pain, in feelings of, you know, some form of like oppression of something, right? People identify with that. I mean, for the most part, like I could, you know, you and I, we can identify with pain. You know what I'm saying? We can identify with like pain from actually like, say like getting beat, or pain from, you know, beating ourselves up at the gym, you know, or pain from like beating ourselves up just emotionally, right? From whatever it is that we feel down on ourselves about, because we're also, we're our own worst critic, or at least I am, you know.
Right.
I'm super critical about myself. I've always been that way because I'm expecting myself to be at a whole different level, let's say. At the end of the day, you got to realize, man, it's like you'll always get in your own way if you take that approach, you know. So I've sort of surrendered to that, surrendered to the way that I am, and just embrace the fact that, like, you know what, man, it's all good. Not gonna change. Yeah.
And you know what I had to really realize, like, it's like I, you know, somebody asked me like what I just asked you was like, what's the best way to be able to talk to somebody who has, who tries to go in the sense of having a strong, like, you ever try to talk to somebody, an elder, if you will, like somebody who's an elder and who really like has strong sense of, I guess I would say, perspective of
Conviction.
yeah, condition of how they view things, of what they've been through and different things like that. And what I had to understand was that there's also people who are young who have strong, you know, opinions, I would say, on matters that they may see or have strong feelings about. And what I had to really come to terms with understanding is that the best understanding from all of that stuff is educating and also having the patience to tolerate their opinions, but then being able to sit there and also educate them through different analogies to help them correspond the two different, you know, opinions of what's really going on. So for instance, you know, you have a lot of people who debate about Christianity, beliefs, and everything like that, and they want to combat you with the Bible and how do you believe in such things like this, that, and the third. And it comes down to the point of having to put different analogies in front of them to let them know, like, this is how I believe in things, or let's have something that's more like modern, something that you can believe in because you believe into it. Okay, cool. Then I would then propose that modern, you know, analogy to them, and they're like, okay, I believe in that. Oh, okay, so this is the same type of method that I'm using to believe in this. So it helps them like coincide the two or connect the 2.
Mm-hmm.
So that's usually what I use for educating people, because it was a point in time where I had to be patient enough to understand that there was other people's perspective that I had to understand as well, and get to the point where I had to show people that a lot of people really respond to attack others for being so defensive, but I had to also understand that, damn, your opinion really isn't combating mine. It's really because your feelings are so attached to your opinion, you just want to be right, you know? And with me understanding all that, I had to come to terms with understanding that can I be patient enough to let them know that this is my perspective and not just me saying it's right or you're wrong. But if I'm wrong, count me out on it, but don't get so hyped to the point where I have to feel like I have to be defensive. Because, you know, when people start yelling and stuff like that, it makes you almost lose track of really piecing stuff together, but almost just like throwing stuff at them to attack them quicker. So you're not really comprehending as fast or communicating effectively, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you're really just trying to stay on offense, you know,
Yeah, exactly.
for the most part. I mean, anytime that you can automatically anticipate, like I already know there's certain people in my circle, you know, or that I've come across in life that as soon as we get into a discussion about anything, I mean, shit, it can be like the shade of green that the grass is. Automatically, there's going to be some form of discourse, you know,
Right.
some form of argument of a certain type, right? I've grown to realize, you know, outside of not taking things personally, outside of not being judgmental, you know, with anybody, when it comes to, you know, the perspective and this and that, sort of, you know, come to realize that it's like feelings, right, are the closest thing to truth that a lot of people have. So like your own individual feelings about a certain thing, you know, that's the closest thing to truth that you have.
Okay,
you know,
you can't hide, you can hide it, but it's something
yeah,
that you truly like. I mean, feel it, so it's your truth, like you just said.
right.
Yeah.
So you know, at that point, man, like it's very hard to try to tug someone, you know, down away from what they feel to be true, because that's how they individually feel. You know what I mean?
Right. So how would you feel as though if somebody were, okay, so what would your approach be? Because mine, I'm a big person on educating somebody. If I feel as though we have different point of views, I
Mm-hmm.
want people to also understand a sense of perspective. Me having a sense of perspective, I want people to understand that. When I say a sense of perspective, I want people to understand that, look, this may not be the right or wrong way to you, but I want you to understand this is how I view it and respect my perspective when
Mm-hmm.
it comes down to the point of view that we are then discussing. So
Mm-hmm.
when it comes down to them understanding the perspective, I then will want them to also understand the value and the magnitude also behind, like, I would say, I actually would say behind the value of not just perspective, but what's the word I'm looking for? I say I want them to understand the value of perspective and also understand that, oh yeah, it's not a right or wrong way to really go about it. Like, well, what I'm viewing. So what I had to do was understand that the perspective is understanding that if we both understand the concept of perspective, and then going into the part of educating the person on my view, but also on the topic at hand, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, say if you do have somebody you come into, because you know we all run into these trolls day in and day out in person, on the internet and stuff like that. So, what do you do when you're really genuinely trying to have a conversation with somebody on a topic that really rubs you the wrong way? How do you feel like you go about it? Because mine is the same approach with anything else, with having a sense of poise, but also having a sense of patience, but then letting them understand my perspective, but then trying to educate them on the sense of not only my perspective, but on the facts of the whole, like, dynamic of the topic, if that makes sense. So what would you feel as though would be your approach if you had somebody approach you, or you're sitting in an uncomfortable situation with somebody asking you about something that really rubs you the wrong way? Because it could be a family member, like you said, it could be somebody that's a close friend that has a different point of view, whether it comes down to politics, religion, I mean, it could be political views. So what would you think would be the proper approach, or your approach with how you would go about it?
You know, even within politics or religion, that's for whatever reason they usually say, right? It's like, don't touch those subjects, right? Because automatically you're just gonna have somebody that's like in a completely different,
From feelings attached to those.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Um, and I guess I can say it. I've definitely had situations in life where, even describing something, whether it was a person of a different religion or whatever, um, usually always starting out with, okay, where do we actually have a common ground with something? So whether it is politics or religion, okay, so find out what the common ground kind of is first, right? Because by identifying that, you're allowing both people to actually simultaneously be educated. You know what I'm saying? Because then at that point, it's just like, okay, then at least we know that the playing field is kind of like leveled.
okay,
We know we both are. We know we both are with this. Now let's express maybe what some of these differences might be. And then again, it's the differences in opinions and the differences in beliefs and the differences, bro, they are just as unique and special, as the difference between, my, kind of like facial hair I got going on and that massive beard you got, that you can develop. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like the shape of your face, the shape of mine, man, like it's something for us to actually appreciate. You know what I mean? Because at the same time, I personally don't ever want to really live in a world where everybody's like under the same umbrella of like thought, of belief, of like, don't ask any questions. This is just how it is. You know, I don't see that to be, it's like going into nature right now, bro, and like seeing every single tree shaped the same way, with the same amount of branches, with the same kinds of roots. There's nothing appealing about that.
You know what I also want to add to it? I know it's kind of like it's part of the subject, but like in my culture, I mean, like how I grew up is questioning was almost a sense of disrespect. If I had a question about, like, in a sense, in Christianity, you could never question God. That was more of like a form of disrespect. Also, when we were little, we would get in trouble if you didn't understand anything. It's almost like a sense of feeling as though, like, you couldn't question authority, because if you did, it was a form of disrespect. So we come into terms of knowing that if I question somebody, I'm being disrespectful. But then how do you go about it in the right way to also get an understanding of something that you truly don't understand, you know? So that's what I feel like was kind of a toll that not a toll, but it was almost like an ongoing thing in my culture with understanding that, like, damn, we couldn't even ask certain questions because it was taken as being disrespectful. I didn't even want to think about questioning why God would do certain things to me when I was little, because it was like, damn, I'm questioning God. Like, he's doing everything for me. I shouldn't even be able to question him. But it's almost like,
Yeah, I'm such a bad person for questioning that.
Yeah, does it make you, does it, like, it's almost like you want to think outside the box and think higher than just what they're telling you not to think about. But it's almost to the point where it's like, where do you draw the line with not letting me be, like, express my creativity, if that makes sense? You know, because it almost makes me want to think outside of what you're telling me that I can't do, because I want to know what's up beyond that horizon, if that makes sense. So, like, it puts us in a situation where we have expectations and certain rules that we have to abide by. And it's like, we have expectations for ourselves amongst the ones that we have from others. So these expectations are sometimes met. So do you ultimately think that's okay? Or, like, how do you think people should go about that?
Well, you know what, bro? Like, first and foremost for that, rule number one, there are no rules. You know, there's not we do not know everything about this life. And to think that we do is, you know, it's just, it makes no sense. You know, like, we understand, what is it, like 20% or something like that of, like, the ocean in the world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, like, the human body itself, like, we just discovered a new organ, right? The connective tissue of the body all of a sudden. Even though it's been, like, spoken about and discussed extensively for, you know, at least over 50 years easily. But again, going back to anything, you know, that's very relatable to people right now, it's like, just understanding that either the person that you're talking to, even if they're authority or not, they're not going to know everything. You know what I'm saying? And so the first thing you could ask that person of authority is like, wait, do you feel like you know everything with this one particular subject? Because I, like you, same thing. When it came to things about God, you know, same thing. Like, I remember once upon a time asking my mom, I was like, Mom, is it possible to kind of, like, love God, but still kind of, like, play around with the devil? You know, like, kind of do some, like, you know, bad things, like, here and there. You know, and then she put it to me, you know, in this way, and it was like, can you play for two different teams? You know, can I put on one jersey, like the Miami Heat jersey, right? And then can I also simultaneously play for the Los Angeles Lakers? You know, and that was her way of trying to get me to iron out, like, this good and bad, you know, evil and this, and, you know what I'm saying? But if you feel uncomfortable asking a question to a person, right? Then you gotta look at you. You gotta look at your own self. Why would you feel uncomfortable actually asking the question? Because if it was trained in you, if it was conditioned in you to be afraid to ask a question, then that's the first thing you gotta get around. You know, it's like, never be scared to ask.
If you notice it, though, a lot of people don't always notice it, though.
If you notice,
if you notice it, that's the thing. Like, and when people, us growing up, like it's a thing, though. Like, you know, because I know I grew up in one of the old-fashioned households. You know, with my mom, my grandma, you know, they have old-fashioned rules to go by. So certain things you just could not do. So you start thinking outside the box, like, when you get a little rebellious, it's almost like, why is this like this? Or why is that like that? Like, why? But it's almost to the point where, if you ask too many whys, you can get in trouble for asking that many whys. But it almost just gets your creative juices flowing, because it's almost like you always, I mean, not almost, it's, you really want to know why. You really want to know why things go like this and why things go like that. So that's what you know.
Yeah. So, like, at that point, then you can ask yourself, like, you know, am I asking the right question? You know,
right.
Because, again, if I ask a question in a way that's attacking your belief, in a way like, hey, yo, AD, like, why do you believe that God X, Y, Z? You know, whatever that question is, right? That's a wrong approach already, or not the most savvy approach, right? Because all of this has to do with strategy. You know what I mean? Like, you gotta really understand, like, strategy wise, you know, what is it you're trying to gain out of the conversation in a way? Because if you're just trying to argue, if you're just trying to fight, you know, that's easy. You know, we can go about that all day. But if you're trying to have the difficult conversation, if you're trying to actually learn something, you know, then maybe you can try to reformat the way in which you're approaching that actual, inquiry, like whatever it is that you want to look into. And then, two, again, go into that common ground, because it's like, hey, mama, have you ever wondered why, whatever, like whatever that question is, right? To get them to relate. Um, I want to point out something else, because real quick, I grew up Catholic, Catholic household, right? So church every Sunday, rosary, every Thursday, um, basically that whole process, right? And then as I got older, and I got, into this decade, right? Going into the in the 30s now. So shit. Um, you kind of you got to get to a point where you form your own sort of belief system, and something that actually makes sense to you. And the one thing that has made sense to me at this stage in life has been, my relationship to Mother Nature, right? Now, in the Catholic circles, there is a lot of discussion about watching out for all this new age, kind of beliefs, right? Like all this new age stuff is trying to break down the old systems, this and that, right? So my question to, people that will call something, new age this, new age that, I mean, first of all, couldn't you apply that to basically any other generation that has come through? Like there's always a generation, right, that's sort of like coming into the life and then realizing something is kind of off, and then they try to go their way to sort of fix that, to sort of, make certain corrections, but then they're getting hassled, or they're getting, they're not getting the support essentially from the previous generation. You know what I'm saying? Instead, they're getting blamed, like, oh, you're shifting things, you're messing things up, And so that's the kind of thing where it does take this sort of independent, self-reflective, kind of stance and position in life, where you need to feel strong enough in yourself to be able to go about, this route of asking, certain questions. Just doing it, just do it without trying to attack the other person, because you got to understand at this point, it's not like the other person knows any better. They're feeling that certain way because they've also been conditioned there. They've also been, set up by something else,
Yeah, and that's what I try to, like, in my group, I try to teach, the girls there, is that, like, I ask them, why they believe in certain things, or like, like for instance, like something off the wall, like, do you believe in aliens? And like, why? I ask them why, or why do you believe in this? And I ask why. She's like, they'll be like, I don't know, I just do it. Like, but don't be a robot. Like just because you feel like somebody told you this, like why do you believe in it though? Like they believe in it, so they pass it on to you because they want you to be a believer of what they believe. But is it what you truly believe? And that's what I feel as though I want people to be able to be conscious of what they really feel, and conscious of what they hold to certain values. Like for instance, I feel like we all have expectations of what we see ourselves as, and what we see ourselves becoming, and what we see ourselves through other people's eyes. And I understand, me as a person, I know I have an expectation for myself to be able to provide for my family, to be able to show people that they can escape like different stigmas attached to mental illnesses, but also being able to escape different expectations from what others have put on them, because I feel like certain expectations are barriers, and it feels as though you put people in a certain box, because it's like, I feel like that this is you, so all the things that I feel like I've labeled you as, that's only what you could become. And what I have to try to let other people understand is that I'm not Adrian, the MMA fighter. I'm not Adrian, the clothing line designer. I'm not Adrian, the founder of the Conscious Down podcast. I'm all of that. So what I like to push the envelope with, letting people understand, is that my expectation is not yours. If I don't exceed, or if I don't pass your expectation, it's not up for me to do that, because in my mind, I feel like the most powerful tool that I have within myself is my mind. And what I have for myself, my expectations for me exceed, and they go past the opinion of your expectation. You feel me? So I feel like your expectation. So like, I try to push that envelope on my children, my son, my daughter, with them being so early, like they're 7 and 5, and let them understand, like, you can do anything you want in the world, right?
Right.
And what do you want to be? And another thing is, I love when, it was a lot of things I had to get. I got a lot of backlash when I started to do a lot of different things. For instance, I first became an MMA fighter. I heard it from all my friends. Hey, bro, they use their elbows and their knees, right? You're going to get knocked the fuck out. I'm like, okay, yeah, that is true, but I can use mine too. Same thing with a clothing line designer. Like, where you going to get the money from? Who's going to buy that? Like, what are you going to make? I mean, same with a podcast, bro. You know, nobody listens to a podcast, and it's like, dang, like, you know, like, even from where I'm staying at, bro, you in Kansas? What the hell did they do in Kansas? Like, it really doesn't matter what you want to be or what you expect yourself to be. At the end of the day, you can hold yourself to so many different expectations of others because everybody has different perspectives, but they also have a different lens that they see you out of. Like, for instance, my son and my daughter see me through a superhero lens. You feel what I'm saying? If I go to my job, those kids there see me through a different lens. My friends see me through a different lens. You know how many different expectations I would have to rise to for me to be the people that all of them want me to be?
Or not rise to.
Exactly. So what I told myself was that I want to be everything that I want to be and more, and I'm going to set an expectation for myself to be. And I want to be everything that I can do. Like, if I can be a astronaut, an MMA fighter, a zoologist, catch sharks, travel the world, I would do all of that. Why? Because I feel like I can maximize my opportunity of life to do that. Because I'm not going to succumb to any kind of expectations to anybody else. You know, because I'm doing everything I would want to do because I chose to do it, you know, and I'm passionate behind everything I want to do, you know, just because, like, you may have the expectation for yourself, and that's fine. Like, you may say, you know what, I just want to have a family, give me a girlfriend, live in an apartment. That's your expectation. If that's your definition of success, that is totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
But my definition is totally different. And honestly, like you said, we all have different perspectives. So our definition is always going to be molded differently. So I could never combat somebody for how they feel about what they want to do. But what I will tell you is don't ever try to put me in a box for me to be just this label as one person, because I exceed all of that. Why? Because of what I've been through, what I've overcame, and where I'm headed at.
Mm-hmm.
But I say all of that just to say because all of that intertwines to the expectation I have for myself of where I'm at, where I came from, and where I'm headed, if that makes sense, you know?
Mm-hmm. I
So,
think in a simple way to kind of quote, you know, that experience for you, man, is like, my expectation is to exceed yours.
that's good, my dog. That's good.
You know,
Yeah.
like just a real simple thing. And you know, I feel like we put too much emphasis, man, on like our concern, like our general level of concern over either different people, loved ones or not. You know, just opinions, you know, like of what, you know what I'm saying? Because if that's the case, I feel like nobody would ever sort of rise to their own sort of life and purpose, because you're always going to stumble. You know what I mean? You can start off with wanting to join a podcast and automatically get at least 5 or 10 people in your circle, you know, that over half of them are going to tell you that's not a good idea. You know?
Right. Yeah.
And so, if anything, as an individual, like if you want to see people, you know, for how they are, like if you just want to have a conversation with someone and you have an idea about a thing and you just automatically want to know what the risks are, like honestly, just share that with people. Like share whatever your ideas with people, and you will see what the failures could look like, because people will always be quick to point out what your failures will kind of be. You know what I'm saying? So as soon as you got those lined out, be like have peace with that, because you realize like, okay, that's coming from somebody else, that's not coming from me, you know. And so long as I keep that language away from myself, now I can continue on my path, you know. But because look, again, so long as you have passion.
So what do you, because I know a lot of people come to terms with this, what do you do with the people that you feel as though are hating on your dream or being realistic with your dream? Because I know a lot of people come to terms with friends being there for them and giving them their best judgment, and it's like, damn, he hating on me, he just wish he was doing it. Or it's like, it comes to the point where it's like, damn, do he really think I can't do this? Do I want to prove him wrong?
You know,
do I want to prove him wrong, or is he totally right with where I'm going with this? You know,
what you do is you appreciate them. You know what I'm saying? You appreciate them because that's our normal cycle of life. You know what I mean? You have the rain, you have the sunshine. You know what I'm saying? You have the grass, you got the sand. You know, you always have two different levels of something. You know, so in order to have that sort of level of success, you also need the people that are going to want to bring you down, bro. You know, you're going to need the people that are going to doubt you, right? Because if you didn't have people doubting you, I mean, some form of you would not want to actually come out of it. You know what I'm saying? It's like this principle of life. You know, nothing nothing is ever stagnant. You know, it's like a universal law, right? Everything will constantly keep on moving. You know, it just so happens that you might just encounter people in life again because of their own life experiences and whatever they sort of been through, that their first instinct, you know, is to try to pull you into a different space, you know, because it's difficult to see a light. You know what I'm saying? It's difficult to just open your eyes sometimes when the only thing that you've known has been that darkness, you know, but you feel that light.
How do you feel about being the person that would be realistic with the person and they take your opinion or your perspective as hating, or you don't believe in the vision I do? Because for me, I mean, ultimately, like, I would love for everybody to be real with me, but that's not always the case of how it's going to go. I know for me right now, I have a vision. I have a vision no matter if everybody told me that, bro, it's not going to work, bro, you're tripping. I ultimately understand the magnitude of what I want to do and what makes me happy, but I also have to understand my goal. So, for instance, with me being an MMA fighter, I know the goal for it is I want to be one of the biggest MMA fighters in the world, but I also have to understand and be realistic with myself of what I want to obtain and a goal and have a plan for that. So it's not just like, hey, it's a shot in the dark, you know? It's not that. It's ultimately a goal, but also understanding what my expectation is for myself. So, of course, I know you're going to sell me short of your expectations. Why? Because you don't see what I see on a daily basis within myself. So that's what I have to be understanding with. So I'm honestly at peace with myself, with my vision, and your perspective of how I see myself in my vision, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, I also have to understand that I have to have a realistic timeline that has a short-term and a long-term goal to that. So I ultimately don't wear myself out when it does come to that, you know? So that's what I do have to come to terms with as well. But I know that, you know, I've been on both ends to where I'd be rooting for somebody, but I also would advocate for them, encourage them, but I had to also understand what's their goal, you know? Like, you know, you have that friend that has that wild idea, and it's like, bro, that's not gonna work. But you know, I know from the bottom of the heart, bro, I know that's gonna make you happy. So I'm going to, how would I say? I'm gonna advocate for the success of whatever plan that you do have. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna advocate for the success of it. I don't care if it is like, hey, bro, I ain't gonna lie, like I don't know how to cook, but I think I want to start selling plates.
Mm-hmm.
You know, of course, I'm a goofy person, so I'm gonna make fun of you. But you know what I will do is, as many times as other people will say, well, how you gonna do it? I'll be the person that's gonna actually be like, all right, so let's come up with a plan. Like, what's gonna be your menu?
Mm-hmm.
Where you gonna sell to? Where are you gonna sell at? What days you gonna sell on? Do you have another job? Where you gonna fund the money at? How much is this gonna cost?
Mm-hmm.
Where you gonna get the groceries? Like that's kind of how I think. You know, it's not that if it's gonna work or not, how it's gonna work. You know, because like that's how I move. Because I feel like everything that I've brought to fruition, like everything that I've talked about, I feel like, you know what, I'm gonna do it. Because you know, I've always had those friends that, bro, you're tripping. Like, you want to fight, you want to this, you want to that. Like, bro, that's not gonna, you know, it's not your vision though. I don't expect for you to see how I see it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, an artist gonna start the drawing off. If look, let me tell you this. If an artist started his picture, say the picture took 3 hours to take.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say he spent his first 30 minutes, right, of doing the picture and stopped. And you looked at the picture, you're like, what the fuck is that? Like, of course, everything to
That's
anybody.
a perfect example. That's a perfect
exactly.
example. Yeah.
But that's why I always
it's an unfinished product, and we usually. But I think most of it, like most of the reason why that happens, you know, with a lot of us is really because, you know, we're so quick to just having access to something, you know, like right then and there, you know. So it's like somebody gets something started, and you're expecting that overnight success, you know, type of thing. You know, you don't realize that there's so much more that kind of goes into it.
From the
you know?
ground up.
Because for you to get into the clothing business, for example, like shit, bro, you know. You gotta wear a few jerseys. You know what I'm saying? You gotta make a few. You know, you gotta try them on. You know what I'm saying? You gotta test it out. And I think most of the things that happen is you know, we look at this life right now kind of like just the sport, in the sense that we're supposed to win or lose. You know what I mean? And like you're supposed to expect this result like right now, that there has to be a score. But the fact that you're playing is the actual point of life in general, you know? So the fact that you're just living is just the point. It's not whether you're winning or you're losing it. It's just that you're just playing, because that is our gift, that we're still here. You know what I'm saying? And if we are here, then there is a sort of purpose as to why we are. And if that purpose is for you to be the one with the crazy ass dream, yeah, that's cool. If that purpose is for you to be the one that's always proving people wrong, yeah, that's cool too. But nonetheless, just understanding, you know, that we're never going to get that fast of a result on anything that we do, because it just requires that exposure and it requires that sort of experience. You know what I'm saying? And so long as you actually find the love and appreciation of that, like, yo, I'm gonna keep making jerseys because I like making them, I like wearing them, I like having a random person come up to me like, hey man, you that dude, oh shit, and you fight, you know, that's so cool.
All
you
that shit.
Right? That gives us that, it sort of reinforces our purpose. But that one moment, you know, is sort of challenged by 10 others that are not like that.
And that, I'm glad that you said that, because like understanding that the goal that you have and what you're trying to reach, but ultimately everything that I'm doing with my life right now is what's making me happy. It's not ultimately for a dollar. So anything that comes with what I'm doing is a bonus. Like everything I'm doing, like when I started making jerseys or these shirts, I was like, damn, I think this would be dope to have. I'm a fighter. I want to have my own fighter shirt. Damn, that'd be dope. Like I just did it. Like I didn't have to look for any kind of like justification for anybody else. So I'm like, fuck it. I mean, I would like your input because I love perspective. But at the end of the day, I know what my vision is. I know I want to walk out to the arena with my shirt on. I know I want to have my own jersey, and I want people to buy my jerseys. And I'm like, damn, you know, everybody got a football player has a football jersey that they can sell. Well, fuck, I want to have my baseball jersey. I can design. I love fashion, so I want to be able to have my own jerseys for people to be able to buy. You know, but I had a vision, and I stayed to it no matter what the naysayers had to say. But I also put into perspective that, hey, everybody's not just trying to hate on me or anything like that. They're ultimately there to still put some type of input to why I can be able to stay on building that foundation of an empire, you know? Yeah. But everybody doesn't see it like that ultimately sometimes, you know? So what I had to understand was that attaining goals, as you reach the big goals, it creates a morale boost. So for instance, I'm an MMA fighter. Every time I win, it creates a morale boost to understand, like, damn, I'm in the right business. I'm in the right direction. You know, but also the setbacks also make you realize the type and magnitude of passion that you have to overcome the setback that you, damn, that's some good shit. Fuck. The passion for what you got, like the setback you have, like the passion that you have and the magnitude of the passion that you have will then make you realize that the setback that you have can be overcame by the passion that you have to keep going. You get what I'm saying? Because I know I have my fair share of setbacks, and I know, like, damn, I'm like, damn, I'm really supposed to do this, or like, where do I go from here? And I had to then realize, like, oh yeah, the passion in me is still burning, so I had to keep going. So those are things that I had to really come to terms with, understanding is that if I love it this much, why would I stop now? You know, if I had the vision for this so much, why would I stop now? Like I said, we talked about earlier with the painting. If I have a painting that takes 3 hours and I did 30 minutes of it and I stop, everybody's gonna look at it like it's crazy. But if I build it from the ground up and I never show anybody until it's 3 hours in and I finish it, it's like, damn, you're really on the right things to justice, you know?
Yeah.
So
passion will always be that problem solver, man. Passion will always be that problem solver. You know, I mean, there is no solution without a problem. You know what I'm saying? Or without a setback. You know, so you have to have it. You know, you have to kind of like go through that. It's like, it's really only in sports, man, that somebody can kind of go undefeated. You know, and even to that extent, they're not always winning. You know, I mean, you can look at Michael Jordan's last documentary as an example with that. You know, yeah, he went 6-0. You know, at the expense of, you know what I'm saying, XYZ things.
Hey, so we got a minute left, but we can always go on another live like right after this, because I know it's gonna turn off. So I'm gonna load this one, and then we're gonna get another live, and then like keep going. All right.
That's dope, bro.
All right, so I'm gonna end this one, so that this one can upload, people can watch it, and then we're gonna go back on live. All right.
Let's go back on it.
All right, cool.
One.
gotta run it back. Part 2. Put your head up. They got there. Look. They got there.
All right, all right. Here we go, part 2.
Yup. I can't even see all
I
these.
have to change the scenery a little bit.
You good, you good, you good. Hey, we almost done with the notes. Look, so we on page 2. We already did page 1. We on page 2.
Okay, well, that's only right.
It's only right. We're on part 2. So, what we were talking about, like that. We were talking about how when you obtain, like when you're obtaining your goal and you reach a small goal within your big goal, it's like a morale boost. Cause I like to make small goals within my big goals so that I keep on going in the right direction. That makes me feel accomplished. That makes me feel like I'm doing the right thing with where I'm headed at. But also, like, it keeps me motivated. It keeps me understanding that success is in my perspective, success is in my rear view, success is in my on the horizon, and it also lets me know that I'm on the right path and I'm headed in the right direction, no matter the expectations of anybody else. But it also makes me it does make me feel better that I hear the expectations, I hear the critics, I hear the downplaying, I hear all of that in the distance. But I also love that my expectations and vision is above all of that, no matter if I do have a setback of anything. So I'm glad that I can oversee that and overcome that, knowing that I'm headed in the direction I'm headed at, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, like, when the expectations aren't met, and some are met and some aren't, you won't always meet the expectations of others. But how and why is it important to you? And to look at it through another lens and find out why. So what is that for you?
You got me, AD?
Yeah, I got you. I was saying,
Okay.
Sometimes we meet expectations. Sometimes we meet some expectations of others. Sometimes we don't even meet our own. But what I have liked to say is, like, you have to always find out what's important to us and how important it is to us, and then look at it through another lens and find that why of why we're doing it even in the first place. So I say, like, when you fall short or anything like that, what keeps you poised to keep going, or even when you feel like you have actually met your match and this is probably the time you're going to give up on whatever it is. How do you feel as though, like, to have that advice or have the willingness to keep going, even if you do or don't have that shoulder to cry on?
I feel like if I've fallen short, then it only means that I can just keep on going. You know, I mean, you don't. Yeah, because you don't want to attack, a problem or whatever the same way, right? And for some people, even saying like a goal that you have in mind, you could look at it like a problem because like you're trying to get somewhere, right? Like you're trying to make it to the top of this or that, or you're trying to sell X amount, you're trying to make X amount of money, like whatever it is, right? So one could technically say that for you, it's like it's a problem that you're not there yet. You know, it's a problem trying to figure out how to get there, right?
Yeah.
If ever I've had, situations that have felt, kind of like a setback or a failure, then if anything, that's just propelled everything even further, because if it wasn't for that, if it's not for that reason of that failure, then I would kind of just maybe find myself in like a place where it's like, all right, cool. Well, I mean, I ain't got to worry about nothing. I'm sitting at the top. And that's the thing where for a lot of people, like that's, no one's really ever sitting at the top like that. That's why you'll find people that are, multimillionaires and they're still completely unsatisfied with life because it's like like I said before about, the whole purpose of life is just actually just playing and living it, not trying to figure out whether you're winning or you're losing in it. Um, if we're out here, and if we have this opportunity, right, and we have this life, then that means we have the opportunity to fail, just as much as we have the opportunity to actually um, like rise above. You know what I'm saying? So I think
So what about for the people who? Oh, go
what
ahead. Go
about?
ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead,
No,
brother.
because I
I'm
was
sorry.
about to say like this. I was about to say, like, what about for the people who are not as transparent? Because I know it's easy to be like, yeah, fuck it, fuck anybody who doesn't believe in what you got going on, and just keep on going. But like realistically, everybody isn't that strong-willed. Everybody isn't that transparent with who they are and what they truly believe in. So like, what about for the people, for those? Because I know it's always easy to promote positivity. It's always easy to promote never give up. It's always easy to be like, my back was against the wall. Nobody believed in me. My mom hated me. My dad hated me, and I became the most rich person in the world. But like, everybody doesn't have that triumphant story, and everybody isn't fighting that magnitude of a fight. So how do you put it on more of a, I want to say more realistic, like stage, but how do you put it on more of a more modern or normal day-to-day stage of people who are fighting different fights, and they're trying to find their way of what they have going on, but they're on their last leg of hope. Because for me, my day-to-day fight would probably be sticking to my diet, making sure that I'm working out the way I'm working out, making sure that I'm still investing within my business, whether it's in my clothing line, whether it's in my fighting, whether it's in me at my job, really investing in myself. And sometimes I don't have that edge to be like, today is the day I'm gonna make something happen. Today is the day I'm going to keep going, because we hit that wall sometimes. We hit those realistic barriers. So sometimes it is hard to be that push, because a lot of us, I'd say for real, a lot of us have a dope support system, but a lot of us don't have a support system that we reach out to in a time of need. Because for me, I have my mom's trait. We'll be suffering and we'll do it in silence. I will go through everything that I'm going through. I will cry alone. I won't be like, hey, can we talk? I won't do that. I'll literally be there for myself. You know why? Because I know that truthfully and honestly and willingly, I know that whatever I'm going through, I feel as though I care the most about what I'm going through, and I won't put it in somebody else's hands to care as much as I care, because I know it's not ultimately their problem. So I know when it comes down to it, they can literally opt out of caring or doing what they need to do for this problem. Why? Because it ultimately originated with me. So when I understand that, it's almost like I would never put the ball in their playing field, so they can then be able to put their twist or turn on how they can do or what they can do for me in my time of need. That is the main reason why I won't reach out when it's in my time of need. That's the main reason why I started putting money in my savings account, because I didn't have to be like, hey bro, can I borrow this? Can I borrow that? Why? Because it took too much of pride out of me to be able to ask for that, whether it was a male or a female. Too much pride, because I wanted to be the provider for my family. So I can't ask anybody I want to provide for something I need, but I'm trying to head on to where I'm going to. You know what I'm saying? So when I had to realize that, okay, at this point in time, I can't trust them as much as I want to trust them to be there for me, because I know they may not care about what I'm going through as much as I care about what I'm going through. So I can't let them in and be vulnerable right now amongst them, because then I didn't get a chance to take advantage of me in my vulnerable state. So now I have to figure out how I'm gonna do this by myself. So I had to become self-sufficient in my time of need. So that got my creative juices flowing every single time my back was against the wall. And luckily, thank God, my back was against the wall a lot of times. So it got me the learning curve of growing up faster than I felt like I probably would have wanted to. With having a children at an early age, being out on my own with my own apartment or own job, working 3 jobs, 21 hours in school, all within the same time schedule, and it helps you understand that, damn, if I stop right now, who's going to take over the whole schedule? So that's what I had to come to the terms with. So it's almost like, what do you do when you hit that wall, when it's like, damn, I don't feel like I may have somebody to call, but I'm not going to call them because I don't trust them to go through or do what I would want them to do. So then now it's like, what's next? You know, so what do you do for the people who are not fighting the big passionate fight of, yeah, I'm going to get rich and take over the world, but it's almost like, damn, today I don't feel like going to work. Today I don't feel like working out. Today I don't feel like sticking to my diet. Hell, today I don't feel like taking my kids to work or being a dad or a parent or anything. Like what do you feel like the advice for the average, I don't want to say average fight, but the day-to-day fight, you know?
Yeah, yeah. No, I feel you. You know, that's why I'm part of, in a big part of my practice of feel is in really showing people, you know, that they can really alter their own state. Like that's in your own hands. When somebody comes through and disturbs your peace, right? And that can be a physical person or that can just be an actual problem, right?
Right.
Or like you said, just one of those days where you're just like, I'm done. I wrapped up. Ya no quiero más. You know, like
So,
I'm ready to just kind of put everything out to the side and I don't even have the right kind of you know, energy in my own body to be able to push forward. It's really important, and you hear a lot of the big motivational speakers and people of the likes talk about how you have to change your own physiology. You know, how you have to, you know, kind of like pat your own self on the back, you know, sort of stand in a different way. Um, there is a voice that really does exist inside of us, man, you know, and that voice is usually a voice, for me, my history, that voice has always been critical, you know, so I know to go to that voice, right, automatically, when I'm doubtful or fearful or just, you know, in one of those situations. And then I actually look to that voice because I know that I can't actually pay attention to that voice. You know what I'm saying? Because I already know this much about myself. I'm so critical about a thing that if I do something and it's not perfect, right, or it's not how, you know, as ideal as I want it to be, right, that I'm just going to tear myself up inside. Now, as far as other people, um, this is the same kind of importance, man, of like sort of exercise for the body. You know, you exercise your body to exercise the demons out of your mind, type of thing. You know, because the moment that you actually feel empowered within your own body, you feel capable, you know, in that sort of sense, right? That's when you can put those other things that are sort of lingering in your mind to rest, you know? Um, with other people that are going through, you know, that kind of situations, you know, for themselves, it's like, you know, hold on to your own hand, man. Just like literally hold on to your own hand, you know, and like realize that you still got blood pumping. And if you still have blood pumping and you can still feel a pulse, you got life in you. And if you have life in you, right, then yeah, maybe today wasn't the greatest, right? But that shit's already passed, you know, and that's the thing to realize. It's like that pain or those problems, those things, they really are only temporary. You know what I'm saying? And more importantly, you can communicate with that pain. You know what I'm saying? You can get through it that way.
that's true. Like, I feel like a lot of that has to do with your mindset. A lot of people have to have a mindset that to keep them to keep going. A lot of people I feel like have to have a certain amount of pain to have them to the point where it's like the pain is going to beat me up so bad to where I say fuck it, pain just beat my ass, or it's going to get to the point where it's like this pain going to beat me up so much to the point where I'm going to beat back. You know, like that's what it got to be like for instance, like, and then another thing you were saying about like having a voice within yourself. And me as a person, I have a heavy conscience. I call it a heavy conscience. Why? Because I'm a person where I can be doing something, and maybe it's my anxiety that talks, but I can be doing something and I'll have 1,000 scenarios that play out at one point in time, and then something that start talking within me, whether no matter what I'm doing. And I think it's part of me, my anxiety disorder, but it also gets me going because I get to think outside of the box with all the different perspectives I think about, but also from the voice within me that's telling me to do this, that, and that, if that makes sense. But also understanding that during the course of what we are dealing with and what we have going on, I think it's also we have to understand not only that the pain is there, it's temporary, but also that you have to connect and be understanding of the source of the pain. You know, like you said, you have to say the source or whatever like that. And mine is my childhood. My pain is my childhood. Like, that's literally my passion. Like, the reason why I go as hard as I go, I do it as much as I do. Like, I'm not just one thing. is because of my childhood. My childhood taught me enough things that I needed to be taught for me to know that I would never want to live like that again. I would never want to witness the things that I witnessed when I was little again. And that was enough for me to be like, you know what? Whatever I'm going to endure as I'm older is enough for me to know that, you know what? I'll endure all this before I ever go back to what I ever was enduring, you know? And that was enough for me. You know, and those life-changing moments are something that you need to go through sometimes, but I had to come to peace with it as well. It still hurts, but I had to come to peace with knowing that I welcomed it. I welcomed the pain enough for me to know that, you know what, this is where I'm starting at, but I'm also understanding that this is not my destination. My mom used to always tell me that, like, it's funny because she always said this, you know, it ain't gonna always be like this. And then when when we would go through whether our living arrangements, whether how she didn't have a job or struggling from where we went through, it was always, you know, it ain't gonna always be like this. And I would tell her to this day now that it's not gonna always be like this because I'm her crutch now. You know, she's leaning on me for support with trying to figure out what she's gonna do with living arrangements, my grandmother, you know, with what's going on. And it's almost like, damn, I'm the one that got to hold everybody up. So that's why I had to take on that. I didn't even ask for this. You know what I'm saying? I tell my mama to this day, I'm built for all this. I'm built for it. You know, I had to be built for it because if it was any other way, you know, it probably wouldn't have worked out. You know, I didn't, when I was 14, I wasn't this kind of person. You know, when I was 8, I wasn't this kind of person. When I was 18, I wasn't this kind of person. You know, I had to be molded and built through life experiences and for the pain to push me to the point that I wanted to be more than what I was at that point in time. But everybody doesn't share that same passion, you know?
Yeah. No, you were molded, you know, sort of as a result of the pain.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
that pain right there, because I mean, if you think about it this way, you know, like you take a beating, right? And you take a beating that's so bad, but somehow you're still in it. You know, you're still alive, you're still there. That should really just tell you, like, be evidence to you of how much of a beating you could potentially take. You know, so how strong your spirit really is, because at the end of the day, you know that this physical body is not going to last you very long. You know,
Right.
and really, it's that spirit, that voice within us that, you know, allows us to keep on sort of propelling and driving forward in that sort of way. Um, you're right when it comes to sort of the mindset that not everybody has a strong mindset, and I know that to be true because I've come across the same kinds of people, and I've been that person. I've been that mirror, you know, of that for myself. Because once
Right.
upon a time, as a child, I used to have a best friend that I just wanted to follow along whatever it is that he did, you know, and I had to go through that for me to realize, like, wait a second, I'm actually not that kind of a person, you know.
Right. Right. Right.
So Alan Watts, famous philosopher of the 20th century, he used to say, we don't know something without nothing. You know what I'm saying? So the same thing, like you don't know life without the pain. You know, you don't know
Yeah.
how effective, you know, and how powerful you can be able to support your kids, your moms, your grandma, have all this onus on you. You don't know that without having to go through all the other circumstances from before. You know?
Yeah. Definitely.
and this
Definitely.
and this and this now at this point, you know, all of that being placed on you, bro, it's just a part of your DNA. Like you got it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You got it.
Yeah.
There's no, but you have to be tested in a way. You know what I'm saying? Like nature itself, like it tests, you know, its sort of ability to survive, to thrive, type of thing. You know,
Right.
so has that just naturally occurs.
Yeah. And you know, another thing I wanted to touch basis on was like we all have different biases within ourselves, whether you like it or not. Like we all have this stigma we have about color, but we have about certain people we see, about certain areas we are in, certain environments we endure, certain places we go, certain things we see, certain colors we see. We associate red with what? Hate, rage, blue, cool, chill, stuff like that. Like even white with cleanliness, with, you know, so like we have different biases, whether they're good or bad, within ourselves. And what I want to touch bases on was saying that we have been exposed to these different biases over the years, almost like being, I guess, it's what we're nurtured, like in a sense, you know, from what we've been exposed to, from its and our environments to the people we're around, to a lot of different variables. But what I wanted to say was that Like for instance, like I used to be scared when I was little. I used to be scared to go to third world countries because I seen through movies, through TV shows and stuff like that, that
Yeah.
third world countries are hell. They're, you know, no food, little water, no houses. You know, it just was very like, it was outlandish in a sense to me when I was little, and it was because I didn't know any better. It was from the mass media of what was portrayed through the media outlets to what made me feel like, okay, this is what they are. For instance, if you've never been to California, if you only seen things through media, you would think that California is this place where it's only gangs, you can only wear certain colors, certain places, and that there's big beaches everywhere, and that everybody parties. And for instance, like Florida, like I have some people ask me like, oh my gosh, are alligators everywhere? I'm like, they're not. They're literally not. Like, you know, we don't have pet alligators, you know, but that's just what people think because they see hurricanes, they see, you know, the hurricane season, the alligators, stuff like that. And that's what they think about because they've never been there. So they only take biases and different information from different places that they've experienced it through, even if though they have never been there. So like, I think as people, we form these biases of ourselves, but also of other people because of what we experienced. But I think that's dangerous because it came to the point where people are acting on these biases from subconsciously and conscious levels, if that makes sense. So it's like, for instance, if you see a person like me on the street before even talking, I can tell you what, not you, but I can just tell ultimately what people would think. Of course, you wouldn't think I'm as educated. Of course, the way I would dress. Of course, the way I would look, from the dialect of my talking, from the way I would carry myself, from the shoes I would have on. You would ultimately think that I would associate with some type of crowd and stuff like that. But that's not wrong. It's just a bias that we have been, like, you know, almost not, I would say, programmed in a way. And it's
No,
the
it's a
thing.
program. It's a program.
Yeah, and in a way, you almost have to unprogram your way to think that everybody is like this. It's almost like the thing where it's like all females are the same, all dudes are the same, or everybody from this area is stuck up or stuff like that. Like, you know, like all football players are jocks or something like that. But it's like ultimately having to reprogram your way of thinking to know that everybody isn't like this. And that's what's going on in our day and age of understanding that, oh, this crowd of people are like this, or every white person is this, or every black person is this. But do you ever sit back and ultimately ask yourself about why you think the way you do and how you got that bias and why you were raised the way you were raised? For instance, I had a person I was talking to in school. I asked them, you know, they told us in class that, like, not even in class, it was a conversation I had with them, and they were saying like, why, like, I never knew why I was scared of black people or why I didn't like them. I just knew that I had to. And then I asked them, like, what made you start asking yourself, why did you not, like, why did you, like, start changing that? It was because I got out of, I started asking myself my feelings. I came to peace with why I felt the way I do. And I started noticing different perspectives and why people are acting the way they do, because, you know, we are portraying in certain media outlets to be certain people. And it's almost like when you see that in person, it's like, damn, it's almost like, I mean, it is like, if you were to see a tiger out in the street, or if you were to see like a bear in the street, you're going to be like, oh shit, let me run. You're not going to be like, okay, let's pet it. It's a grizzly. It's Yogi Bear. You're not going to do that. You're definitely going to run, or you're going to get out of there. So that's what I feel like people are. And then also with the generations before, they pass down certain different type of like stigmas and different points of view to that person to make them feel like, damn, they don't disassociate the opinion from what they're being taught. They associate it with this being taught to me. This is fact. This is taught to me. This is fact. They don't associate it with like, damn, my mom just feels like this, so that's her opinion. So I can think for myself, you know. So that's kind of where the biases start, because when you are programmed over and over again, year in and year out, it's almost like, damn, I can't go against mom and dad, because why? Like we said before, you would get beat. You will be consequented for that, and we didn't want to deal with those kind of consequences. So it's like, damn, that's just how things were. So I mean, I'm just going to believe in that way. And then when you believe in that way so long, it's almost stuck. You know, so it's hard to gather stuff like that. So it's like, you may be scared of black people. You may be scared of certain animals. Why? Because they're scared of this, or I was basically taught to.
Come across it all the time whenever I'm walking the streets with my pup Luna. You know, Luna is, to anybody that knows her, an angel in the form of a canine. You know, a cuddly bear, man, like a sweetheart, you know. Um, Most people that have already had an experience, a negative experience with dogs, naturally, whenever they see me in the street with her, and in most cases, I do walk with her without a leash because, you know, I don't like that whole concept, man. I mean, nothing ever did well in chains or on a leash. You know what I'm saying? The leash and all that whole thing, that never represented, you know, peace, unity, and harmony. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That represented something else, you know, and I apply that same thing even to my animal, right?
Right.
So people kind of will either walk out of the way or tell me like, yo, they bite, whatever. And so I understand, like, at that point, you know, again, whether it's a person, like, say if I express something like an idea to a person and they already hit me with the doubts, you know, it's almost like I got to ask myself the question like, yo, um, I'm pretty sure, but you probably just had a similar situation where you went to talk to somebody like that other person I'm talking to and they were shot down. And the only thing that they're passing along to you is the negativity from the other person, because
Right.
that's what's closest to heart.
Yeah.
You know, that's what's like the condition, you know, for them, right? Is to just pass along that fear. Um, the thing
fear.
about it, you know, with life, man, is like, you know, in the fear is where you find the freedom. You know what I'm saying? When you go through the fear of something, right? That's when you actually find like, wait a second, this actually isn't that bad. And that fear was just an illusion. You know, you could apply that to say something like skydiving. You know, I used to be terrified of roller coasters, right? Mostly because of the feeling of like the whole up and down, the stomach shifting, you know, that whole sort of thing, right? But the one of the most blissful moments in my life that, you know, outside of lovemaking, you know, that lasts like about a minute or two, has been skydiving. You know what I mean? That was a joke, by the way.
No,
Yeah,
no, I heard. I was
Strap
hoping
that
you
on
were
me.
joking. So I,
Right? You know what I'm saying? Most euphoric experiences of my life, you know, between the 1 to 2, you know, minute time frame
yeah,
with skydiving. Outside of lovemaking with skydiving.
yeah.
But same thing, because, you know, like, it's I think once we sort of, you know, understand that really, you know, fear is just, it's just another layer, man. You can peel that out, right? Just like you would, you know, a banana, an onion, whatever it is. Like, it can just be removed, you know. And Bruce Lee was one of those people that used to say, like, you know, it comes as far as styles. He's like, take what's useful, throw away what's not, and then create your own. You know what I'm saying?
That's
So
what I do with
our
fighting.
families, our families wanted to instill certain values and certain things on us, right? And so we can take that, like, what's useful of that, like, okay, family wants me to, like, you know, just be an overall like good citizen or good Catholic or good this or good that. All right, that's cool, you know. But yeah, at the same time, like, that doesn't necessarily mean that I have to live it exactly in that sort of way, you know. So I can discard the things that don't serve me and then apply, you know, what I actually want within my own life.
For sure.
But that's a question of self, man. You know, and that's
Right.
how deep are you willing to go?
And,
In most
that's the
cases,
thing, though. Yep, that's the thing. You have to educate yourself on these biases, being true, or is it just how you view these biases? And then what some people, they hold on to the biases and see them as their truth and only the truth, and that's not always the case. So then someone actually come in contact with the proof of these biases. They will literally come in contact with the proof of the biases that they then have of being wrong, or just need to be educated on these biases. So you have some people who have biases towards certain things and they understand that this is my bias, but I understand I want to know the truth behind it. But then you have some people who don't even care about the truth. This is my bias and this is my only truth. So I don't care about what you feel about it because that's your opinion. This is my truth. You know, and it's crazy how you can then put those two concepts together and be like, okay, I can tell you that this is literally how it is. But then you would then find that how you feel about something is your truth. That you will literally spin your perspective of saying that that's the truth. So if you have somebody who can't disassociate those two, your opinion and the truth, you literally have a conversation that's going to turn into an argument and will never diffuse. Why? Because that person's going to stay stuck in their ways, and then they're going to that's a person who's stuck in the form and fashion of somebody who only sees something one way. So you can't make peace in a situation like that. So nobody's going to learn anything, but knowing that, hey, that person is stubborn enough to not learn to believe anything else, and knowing that you're never going to reach like the end goal. So lastly, what I want to touch bases on is basically just concluding that is sometimes our biggest problems are mentally. Like I feel like mentally, like right now, if I wanted to do like whatever I want to do, all I have to do is put my mind to it and go ahead and do it. Because mentally, what would stop me is me telling myself, don't do it. And I can stay right here and I literally won't do it. If I want to go run outside right now, I can literally tell myself, let's go run. And I'll really go do it. So the biggest thing, I feel like our problems are mentally. They're stored up there. They're from our anxiety, depression, from all our feelings, our emotions that are contributing to right up here. And so I say once we get out of our head so much, there could be so much action that can take place in the time we spend thinking about it. It can be replaced with action. So I feel like that's really what needs to be done for people who feel like they spend a lot of time in their head for being scared of doing certain things. I feel like they can then express themselves in different manners to be able to manifest those different thoughts and dreams or whatever they can be able to do, because we have a lot of time to be able to do all of that. Why not express it through different ways? So I feel like this will then make all of us productive in so many different ways, form, and fashions that we can even think about. Because if I always had a dream of thinking that I can make design clothes and be a fighter, and I just like, you know what, I'm a football player, I'm gonna help people out with their mental health, and that's all I'm gonna be, because that's what I feel like I'm gonna be. And I thought about everything else that I wanted to be, and I just stayed in my head. Nobody would ever know the potential of how great I feel like I really am, and the vision that I had, if I never tried to at least try to put it on paper or put it out and manifest it out into the world. So I feel like all of us would never know where we will be at, or where we would even end up at, if we never manifest those thoughts into the real world. Because what's really truly stopping us is the biggest problem that I said before in the first sentence was our biggest problem is being our mentality. And if I ever let you get inside my head, you can then shift gears and put me in a direction where I can then go somewhere else. So I feel like the strongest thing that you can then have next to your heart really is your mind. Because my mind can start, stop, and continue to be consistent, resistant, resilient, and just consist of so many different things that keep going and pushing in the right direction. So like I say that to say this. To anybody out there who is listening, is going to listen, that there's been so many different obstacles that have been in my way and anybody else's way, and there's going to be a sob story for every and anybody. I promise you to this day, there's not going to be at least one person, or nor more than even one person, that is going to care as much as about your situation than you. And it's only so much of your story that you can use as a sob story to make somebody care enough. And I promise you, with somebody with a story like yours, there's 10,000 other people with a story just like yours. And it's going to matter to some person that can help you, to the point where it's like, what makes your story so much different, to where I should come out of my own time to help you with your situation. Because ultimately, when it comes down to it, I can tell everybody what I've been through, but ultimately they're like, damn, I'm sorry, I hate that you went through that. But at the end of the day, they're going to ultimately like, what's next? Like, then what? Well, fuck, I told you your story, feel bad for me, help me. That's not ultimately how it works. I mean, it can happen for a certain amount of time, but ultimately it depends on the goal that you want to achieve and where you want to go at. So the reason I say that is because I feel like everybody has the potential to be the best version of themselves. I feel like we all have different levels and magnitude of passion, and sometimes you can cash in that passion to different things that you feel like you can manifest. And I cash in my passion with everything that I do, because I'm just a passionate person. Anything and everything that I want to do, I do it through passion. I think that's one of the best components I have for myself. But everybody does not share that same passion. So don't get it twisted with thinking that you have to do certain things through passion if you are not a person who moves through passion. I'm a person that moves through emotion. I'm a person that moves through passion. So when you see me fighting, you see me promoting my podcast, you see me in person with my different emotions, you see me as a person who is transparent in a sense, because I move through those emotions and that passion, if that makes sense. Whether it's a good or a bad, it's either a happy or a sad or anything like that. It's always on a scale. So I say all that to say this. Once you find your passion, let that be the fuel to take you wherever you are going to go. Do not find a goal through a materialistic variable, because that materialistic variable can come and go. And yes, you are right. the passion can come and go, but you know what you can do? You can refuel the passion to then take you wherever you will want to go, and you can take different tangibles. Tangibles will then be variables, which can be then money, they can be people, because people are interchangeable. You can take different things with you to manifest to where you would like to go. Like I said, you can have your passion, which can be helping people. Let's start a business. Okay, I got a business. What are my variables? My employees, my money, my location. My variables are my environment. So then all those variables will then manifest your dream to blossom into whatever you would like it to be. But you know what will keep you going? The passion to help people, because at the end of the day, you will never not want to stop helping people because it was your passion to do so. So no matter if you retire from that business, you won't retire from that passion. So don't ever stop at the end of the day, because the passion will keep going when the materialistic stuff stops, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's kind of like basically what I wanted to say with that. I think that really was some. You still there? They got some bad signals. Where you at, man? Where you at? We gotta wrap up the podcast, man. Wrap it up. Feel me? Probably had a bad connection. Definitely had a bad connection. Wake up. Wake up. I don't know if you're gonna be back or not, so my kitty. No, but just concluding on what I was saying, I hope y'all guys was able to take something away from that. You know, I really get real passionate about topics like this because I feel like it's something that we all need to be able to touch bases on and come to terms with understanding. And I just feel like it's something that we can all relate to. So I really hope that you took something away from that. I know it's a long ass episode. I know it's very long, but I'm glad you were able to take something away from it. I'm gonna try to get both of these streaming. I'm gonna try to get both of these IG lives like on my YouTube page, so y'all be able to touch base on that. I hope y'all were able to catch the last part of what I was saying, because that was some good ass shit. That was some good shit. But now for real, you'll be able to get my fighter t-shirt, my Cyborg Fighter t-shirt on my podcast website. It is ConsciousGemsPodcast.com. It's on my Twitter or on my IG if you follow that. So it's some good stuff on there. You can also be able to get to my YouTube page where I have all my podcast episodes on there. So I got a lot of big announcements coming up soon. I'm still working on the jersey, so I can have them on my website. So yeah, be on the lookout for those. I also have my Conscious Gym shirt coming soon, so it'll be on my website as well. Hey, I'm really doing this all from the ground up, so please be patient with me. I'm still just working on it, and I'm not really looking for $1, honestly, bro. I'm just working from the heart, for real. So you know, all of this stuff that I'm doing is really manifesting and genuine from the heart, for real, for real. I'm not looking to try to make $1 million. Actually, I really am, but it's a passion for me wanting to be the biggest person in everything I really do. So that's really where the passion goes, and it don't stop there. So I'm just an advocate for you to be able to be the best version of yourself. So yeah, that was Luigi Pisani, the founder of the Feel Theory. So yeah, hope you got something out of that. Be able to look at my YouTube page. Y'all should subscribe to that. Or my Twitter, follow that, follow my IG. I'll keep you guys updated, and I'm gonna start putting out more content because it's a lot of stuff I want to get off my chest, and I feel like it's a lot of things that I feel like we should all be able to share. So, yeah, we out of here. Feel me? We out of here. Understand? Weezy out of here.